Hi, dear 150 friends. Thank you for looking in because this is completely optional material. Nothing will be quizzed. But as you know, sometimes I like to share some experiences with you, and I feel so lucky that, I have had many opportunities in my life to see things for myself, and I hope that all of you will be able to do this for yourself someday. I will tell you about my excursion up to Mount Fuji. And as you can see from this picture, there are some pleasures of climbing Mount Fuji, but also there are some woes here. So this was really an interesting story. I have gone to, or I went to Japan for about a 2-month period a couple years ago, and I was there early in May and June, sort of just when school went out, I went over there. And that is actually way too early for traveling Mount Fuji. The main season there is July and August. In June, the mountain just about opens up again after a long winter break. And I had checked the weather and checked the weather and checked the weather, and it just didn't look good. So literally, I was at the bottom of the mountain, digging around, being scared. And every day I was talking to some travelers who were coming down, and some of them, young, strong kids who you live in Colorado or something and are used to the heights and the climbing. To them, this was all no problem. But I talked to some other people, and they had very big reservations. So here's one day where I was like, okay, either I go tomorrow or I don't. So I was still digging around, and I was in a little music park, which was actually really fun because they had like old organs and a beautiful park, as you can see here. And there was this one spot where I'm taking a picture right now, and there is this beautiful picture of Mount Fuji supposedly right in front of me. If I look straight ahead, I should see what this picture is showing me. And as you can see, I was looking into the thick of the clouds. Mount Fuji was just nowhere to be seen. The weather was cloudy, and when it's cloudy down there, we actually, had pretty good weather to walk around. But when you go up higher, there was probably snow. So should I dare or should I not dare? Well, I know for sure that if I had just chickened out and turned around, that I wouldn't have forgiven myself for the rest of my life. So I decided, with a big tingle in my stomach, that the next day I would just go. Now, some people do the absolutely impossible, to me impossible. They start this climb in the afternoon. They climb pretty much for 6 hours up. They are there way late in the dark. Then they take some rest. They maybe sleep for a couple hours up there, and then they see the morning rising sun, and then they climb all the way down, and that takes them less than 12 hours total. So I was like, no way am I going to do this in 12 hours. I'm not even used to climbing. I'm totally out of shape. I have endurance, but I'm not physically very fit. So I'm going to take my sweet time. So I started late in the morning, and here's sort of like a bit of a map before we get going. So you can start way down there, and you can do the whole climb up, and that was not my idea at all. That would have been 13.2 kilometers. Now I can easily walk 13.2 kilometers, which is about 10 miles. But if you think about up, right, if you have to walk that amount of distance up, straight up, that is a completely different story. So most people, and me included, take the bus sort of midway. This is the last station where you can take a bus. This is the center here. It's called the fifth step, or the fifth station. You get dropped off here. You can have a nice meal, and then you start leveling over, and then you connect with that path that comes from the bottom up, and then you only have about 5 kilometers to walk up. So that was my plan. The season wasn't ideal, but the mountain had opened up to some visitors. The advantage of the early season here was that there were not many people up on the mountain. You have to imagine, in July and August, literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people walk up this mountain every day, and it's pretty much single file up there. right? So the challenges were, first of all, that I hadn't prepared for this trip. I didn't have walking shoes. I didn't have the clothing that I needed. It was summer down there, so I had brought only summer clothes, but up there it was still winter. So I came with my little backpack, I think in my next, oh no, you will see me in a moment. So what I decided though is I just told you about Shintoism. Mount Fuji is one of the mountains that has always been perceived as a holy mountain in Japanese culture. That means there are kamis living there. The biggest kami, of course, the mountain itself, but kamis in the woods, like dangerous little mean spirits that could throw obstacles in your way. And so you're well advised to go to the very bottom of this mountain, way down there, where there's a beautiful little temple. Look at that. And you now can see that this was built by a shogun and not by the emperor, right? This is the Chinese style Shinto temple. And these two mischiefy guys are honored there. These are the Fuji Yoshida Sengen Taisha. So this is the name of that temple, right? And these guys are tengus. Tengus are mountain creatures. They're like ogres. They're gonna be mean to you if you are not nice to them. So I bought an Emma, and I hope you remember what an Emma is. It's I think I show you this in the no, but you will see it in a minute. An Emma is one of these little wooden plaques. Do you see these stands here where people have written wishes and say, please, mountain creatures, be nice to me. May my journey be peaceful. May my journey be successful, and all of that. And then you hang this up. You pay some money. You see this beautiful temple here. You see those two ogres again, right? And you see, if you're lucky, there might be a Shinto performance where they are drumming and maybe a Shinto priest handing out blessings. But I saw a little ceremony there that a Shinto priest was doing for somebody else. So I just hung up my Emma, and that was the day before I went. So the next day, oh yeah, here it is, right? So here I'm appeasing the ogres. This is the thing. And the next day I took the bus to this beautiful station where a lot of people still buy sort of last minute gear. But I decided for me a walking stick was probably all I needed. And here's my little backpack. And I had stuffed just about anything I could find, like my long sleeve underwear, my pajamas, some extra socks. But as I said, I didn't have much because it was summer and I had come in summer clothes. But even though I didn't have any walking shoes, I trusted in my good Keens. My Keens have saved me many times the world over. So I thought I started out, it's that level-headed path that connects you with the bottom path. And I was like, well, this is cool. This is no problem. After all, right, Mount Fuji is not like the Himalayas or so. It's not for professional hikers. It is supposed to be for almost anybody who wants to climb up there. So here we come. This is the crossroads where things divide, right? You can go down or you can go up. I was like 5.2 kilometers. I can do this. But then I saw all these people who looked like me. All of a sudden, they all unpacked all this fancy gear. And I'm like, damn it, I don't have much gear to unpack. I just have to, get going. And so I went up. And as you see, we're not that many people there. But once again, we are hitting the weather. And also what we're hitting is the point where the tree zone ends. So up to this point, we have trees. And further up, it's just all very barren. It's a mountain that has been outfitted for walking up. So you see here nice little steps. And what you pretty much do is zigzagging the mountain up, which extends your walk by a long shot, but it makes it not as steep and difficult to climb. And before long, I made friends on this walk. In fact, I had two friends from Australia. They were about my age. And then I had a young couple here from Great Britain. And we decided to just, walk for a little while together. Then, of course, these youngsters were faster than I was. But this guy in particular, the guy from Australia, he, like me, he had a lot of trouble with the adjusting to the heights because the air gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And I know myself, I do not do well in very thin air. So all I know what I have to do is always go just about, maybe 500 meters and then take a breath and really do a lot of deep breathing and then keep going. So his wife decided to go with the youngsters from Great Britain, and he and we joined up, and, we were the old and slow pokes, I guess. So it got, look at this, it got worse and worse, the weather, as we climbed up. And you see that this is not a pretty mountain. There are a lot of these sort of, things here that people have screwed onto the mountain almost, right? Because that prevents sliding from the mountain. It catches snow lavines when they come down. And so it's not a pretty mountain whatsoever. And then, lo and behold, when nobody knew, all of a sudden these wonderful steps and the nice slope that had gotten us halfway up the mountain stopped, and now we had to climb quite rough terrain. Well, at that point, you see these two here, right, with their nice gear. They had bought new shoes down there. They had bought new jackets. But I'll tell you that she was starting to complain. She was like, I can't do this. This is too much. I can't breathe. I can't walk. This is like, what did you get me into? And the guy, this was like his life's dream to climb Mount Fuji, but he came with his girlfriend. And I'll tell you this. One of the reasons I'm traveling alone is that I don't want anybody to complain when I want to keep going, but I also don't want to slow down anybody else. So I love being by myself because I can always push myself as far as I can go, and I don't have to, make the decision based on anybody else. But I could see there was trouble brewing between those two here. This is a beautiful kind of greeting that everybody who comes down or goes up sort of says to every stranger. Gambate kudasai, gambate masu. Good luck, and the answer is, I will do my best. So this was beautiful, right? You say hello to strangers. And you can see me here now. I'm further up now. It's foggy. I can hardly see the mountain. I can see only what's right in front of me. Here's one of these ugly barriers. By now I'm wearing my silk long underwear, which I carry because it's only as big as a fist, really. You can roll it into nothing. I have a scarf. I have my jacket, but that's about it. And it's getting colder and colder and colder, and I'm freezing. And by holding my walking sticks, my hands are freezing. So I'm running into these two guys who were actually leading a group of 3 or 4 people up the mountain. And at this very point, this guy was handing out little gloves. And I was like, oh my God, if I would have gloves like this, I would feel just so much better. So I see him handing out all these gloves, and I looked at him with my longing eyes. And when he's done and everybody in his group has gloves, I walked up to him and I said, I am so very sorry, but would you by any chance have an extra pair? And this guy is smiling at me and pulls out another pair of gloves out of his backpack, and he hands it to me, and I'm loving it. I call this manifesting. I think I mentioned that later on. But manifesting, somehow, somewhere, there's always help out there when you are in the wilderness. And here's something funny that happened to me, right? As I am walking up and it's getting steeper and steeper and I'm working hard, I get so sweaty that I'm literally sweating, dripping wet. All my clothes now are dripping wet. But the minute I take off my jacket, the wind and the cold is so immediate that I am ice cold. So between being ice cold and sweaty hot, and now all my clothes are wet, I was like, gee, this is not cool. What am I going to do? So I'm walking from station to station. Look at this. I'm already at the eighth station, and every station says that they are closed. So finally, I find a guy who's actually just sitting there, a guard, and I'm saying, I need help. I'm sweating. I'm not this is not a hiking gear, right? This jacket there is not meant to be hiking gear. It's just for the rain. Can I please dry my jacket? And so I'm drying as many of my clothes and just warming up a little bit, and then I'm pushing on. This is kind of funny. At the bottom of the hill, now this is getting sort of a little personal here, but there are, at this point, no really open toilets, right? Because the stations are not open yet, but also there is really, you are encouraged not to do a number 2 up there because they are just not, they cannot handle the waste of thousands of people. So at the bottom of the hill, you are getting a container that you are supposed to carry with you. It's sealed, it's folded. You're supposed to unfold it when you need it for number 2 or even for number 1 when you come to a station that is closed. You're not just supposed to pee into the landscape. Remember, this is a holy mountain. So I had this little gear with me, but thankfully I didn't need it. But I found one little bathroom which actually was closed. But look at this. I found these signs and I thought they were hilarious. You need to use this washing gun for flashing. Not flushing. So it was cute. I took the pictures and, and they let us do number 1, but we had to almost pay $5 to do number 1. So they were really taking it from the living there. And I didn't want to use this thing there, right? I just paid my $5 and I was like, okay, I'm going to make it up to the mountain. So, and then there are these signs everywhere at the stations. I pray that mountain climbing can be finished safely. And believe me, at that time I was praying because the air got thinner and thinner and I got either sweaty hot or freezing cold. And guess what? By this point, the British young couple had given up. The woman said, I can't do this. I will stay at the nearest station that will take me in and give me a bed. I'm not going any further. You can go up. You can pick me up. But guess what? This guy, of course, loved his girlfriend. Didn't want to have a big fight, and so he gave up too. And I felt so sorry for him. So at this point they gave up. At this point, what happened is actually that these, the Australian couple, the older couple, they had booked a station further up, and the younger, the younger guys had booked the station up, and the older couple had booked the station down here. So they switched their booking so that the young couple could just stay there. The girl didn't have to go any further. And they and we were now on our way up here. So here we are, the old folks were outdoing the young folks. By that point, the path had gotten a little more smooth, but it only looks smooth because it was very slippery, right? When you go up and it's all rubble with my Keens. I mean, if I would have had just hiking boots, I would have been so much better off, but my Keens were really making me slip up and down. And as you can see, the mountain doesn't get any prettier. It is an ugly hill. So, so up to this station, the 3 of us walked together. Now, even the wife, who had been sort of like, she was mocking us a little bit, the 2 of us who were taking our time. But I was reminded of the hare and the snail. We were the snails, but we were steady. We paced ourselves. We were doing our breathing exercises and we were pushing onward. She, who had been, hopping along with those young guys, now she was so out of energy that she was happy to snail along with the 2 of us. So this is only half a kilometer. This is only 500 meters. It probably took us 2 hours. So when we were there, I had to say goodbye to them because my booking was even another half a kilometer up. So I had to walk by myself. I was super sad when I had to say goodbye to them because now I was almost by myself. I was one of the very last ones who was making it up. Everybody on the mountain had passed by me much faster than I could go. And I was a little discouraged. But lo and behold, something very strange happened to me. I said goodbye to them, and all of a sudden, it was like a boost of energy hit me, and I was like totally euphoric. Even though now there was snow, even though I was completely alone, even though I was like, these were steps, and this was hard, and I was sweaty, and I was cold, I was like in heaven. I was like, yeah, I can do this and I'm so strong. And I was like, something isn't right here. And wouldn't you believe it, just about 3 weeks earlier, I had met up with an American guy from the military who had been stationed in Okinawa. We met at a castle and he told me sort of about him being a pilot. And he said that they have these very interesting exercises. They have to see what happens to them when they are oxygen deprived, because every person acts differently. Things happen differently to different people. Some people faint, some people get euphoric, and he told me that he was one of those euphoric types. And I had never heard this in my life, that when you don't have enough oxygen, you can get euphoric. And when you get euphoric, you think you can do anything in the world, and before you know it, you keel over. It's over. You are done. You are collapsing there. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm oxygen deprived. This euphoria isn't real. So I slowed down. I did so many breathing exercises, you wouldn't even believe it. I did 5 steps, breathing exercise, 5 steps, breathing exercise. I didn't have any oxygen with me. I had to just pump it into my lungs. And so I was like snail pacing up the mountain. So there I am. This was the picture where I started. I arrived at my 8.5 station. I was literally the last one who came up there before the dark hit. I had manifested gloves. I had taken my time. I was literally up walking up there in twice the time. In double time than everybody else, right? I was determined to go up to Mount Fuji. Nobody was going to stop me. And I was so sad for that other guy who had to stop. I had so much luck on my side that this guy had told me what happens to people when they're oxygen deprived. But let's not forget, I was only at the 8.5 station and I still had about 1 kilometer ahead of me. But I now had a bed to stay overnight and I could sit and eat. Whoa, now that was big. There was my sake buddy. He had, of course, passed me hours earlier. He had zipped by. He was a young military guy from the military. He was an American, right? American soldier. That was his thing. We were at the 9.5 station there. We decided to drink sake together, and I asked him what to do. What do military people do, right? These guys, they know stuff. I said, all my clothes are wet. How am I going to get up in the morning and have wet clothes? And he said, you know what? Put everything on that is soaking wet and then climb into this sleeping bag. Here we are, we're having our sleeping booths. There were 6 inches between people and you couldn't spread out in this bed. You better slept as straight as an arrow with your hands left and right of your body, just like in military boot camp, right? So this Marine guy, he told me that my body heat and that sleeping bag would dry out my clothes. And so I did. Now, here's the crazy thing. This is meant for people to come there maybe at 6 o'clock at night and then sleep until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then they all get up and they have 2 hours ahead before they reach the top of the mountain. And then everybody gets woken up like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because they go up to see the sunset. Now, can you just believe it? How stupid people are. It was crystal clear from our walk up there that there was no sunrise. No sunset, no sunrise. Forget about it, right? So the Japanese guys came through at 4 o'clock in the morning, woke everybody up and said, we do not recommend you get up because there is no sunrise. What do all people do? Well, half the people. They all go up, they drink their tea, and they go up that mountain. He comes by at 6 o'clock again. He wakes up the next round. He says, 6 o'clock, everybody up. And I'm like, why on earth would I get up at 6 o'clock? I want to sleep. So I said to the guy, can I sleep? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, okay. I said, how long can I sleep? He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, can I sleep till 9 o'clock? He said, no way. At 8 o'clock, I'm going to wake you up and you're up. Okay, fine. 8 o'clock. He woke me up. He woke me up And here down here, right, I went to that to that table, and I had looked at my weather forecast, and there was a prediction that around 10 o'clock the weather would just break a little bit and it would get better. Now, normally you just gulp down your hot tea and you move up. Well, I dragged out my breakfast for 2 hours, and you're not supposed to, and under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have been able to. But because this was pre-season and they didn't have thousands of people to deal with it, they let me sit there. So I was sipping one cup of tea after another. By the time I was just well rested and had a beautiful breakfast, some of these guys came back down from the mountain who had gotten up at 4 o'clock and at 6 o'clock. They were as depressed as you can imagine because they had to walk up in the dark. They got up to Mount Fuji. They saw absolutely nothing. They climbed down in the fog. They were grumpy and growly and now getting ready for their breakfast, whereas I was like, okay, you guys, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to go up. Look at that. The weather had cleared up. And so I had a beautiful walk in the morning. I was rested. I had energy. I could see the sky. But everybody who came down said, yes, you see the sky now, but the top of Mount Fuji is hanging in a cloud, exactly the clouds I had visited from below. Well, you should look at this picture and you should now understand what's up. Look, here's a guardian figure guarding the torii entrance gate to a shrine that was dedicated to the Mount Fuji kami. So here is the last shrine dedicated to the mountain. Unfortunately, the station that was actually connected to it was still closed, but I said a little prayer to the mountain kami. I rested a little bit and I moved on. And I reached the mountaintop, and just as predicted, I barely could see 100 yards ahead of me. I couldn't see the crater, which would have been to my right. I was so sad. I decided to wait for 10 minutes and then start my descent, and wouldn't you know it, for just about 5 minutes, the sky opened up, the clouds were gone. I got somebody who was up there with me to take a picture right in front of the crater of Mount Fuji, and before I knew it again, the mountain closed up again. And there was the snow again, and it was ready for me to go down. And I cannot even tell you what that moment meant to me. I had made it up that mountain. I'm over 60 years old. I did it even though I really don't do well in thin air and up that high. I made it on my own terms. I made it, and you know who didn't? Who did not? Was the military guy, the Marine guy. He had taken everything too fast. He had slept too little. He had gotten up too early. About halfway between the 9.5 station and this temple that I just showed you, I saw him, and being so sick that he had decided he had to turn around. Don't overdo it, guys. Never overdo it. Be a snail, right? So I went down, and as I came further down, right, you see now you go a different way up. It was all rubble. It was very steep. You have no idea how many times I landed on my butt on my way down. My Keens didn't handle this very well. I was slipping and sliding, but I was happy as a clam. And here is a very wise saying that I can just only give to you for the trip than when you will go up Mount Fuji. Oh, snail, climb Mount Fuji, but slowly, slowly. I didn't even know that saying, but I knew what I had to do, and I did it. Now here's something else very wise. A wise person climbs Mount Fuji once. Only a fool would climb it twice. I agree. There are actually many books written why you should never climb Mount Fuji. As I said, look at this beautiful mountain. Look at this absolutely gorgeous symbol of Japan. The closer you get to it, the uglier it gets. the closer you get it, the more disillusioned you are about this mountain, right? But hey, I hope you enjoyed our little excursion up and down Mount Fuji. Goodbye.